You know the scene. It's the classic end to every major construction project.
Oh yeah, the big party.
Right. You've got the local politicians, the developers in the expensive suits, maybe a guy holding a pair of comically large scissors.
Always the giant scissors.
Always. So
Yeah.
ribbon gets cut, someone smashes a champagne bottle against the wall, everybody claps, and you think, well, the building is finished, the project is over.
Right. I mean, it is a great photo opportunity. It looks fantastic on the company website. But
Yeah.
if you were to pull aside the project manager or the contracts administrator right at that exact moment,
Yeah.
you wouldn't see relief. You would probably see sheer panic.
Panic. But why? I mean, the building is standing right there. It's done.
Because for the people who actually manage these contracts, that ribbon cutting is not the finish line. It's barely the beginning of the end. In fact, the gap between finishing the physical work and actually closing the contract
Right.
is where projects just go to die, a slow, painful administrative death.
See, that is exactly what we are unpacking for you today, because we all tend to think done means done. But we have a source document here today that completely proves otherwise. We are doing a deep dive into employer requirement contract completion.
Specifically, document number E2.17.
Yes, E2.17, which I know it sounds incredibly dry.
It does. E2.17 does not sound like a thriller. But this document is essentially a survival guide. It's the playbook for the art of the exit.
The art of the exit, I like that.
Yeah, because it outlines this massive invisible gap between physically building a structure and legally detaching yourself from it, which are two very different things.
And looking through this source, it is rigorous. We are talking about a whole world of specific binders, mandatory dossiers, legal releases that frankly sound terrifying.
They are terrifying.
And checklists that cover everything from million-dollar claims down to, well, literally down to the trash left in the parking lot.
It has to be that way, though. Because if you miss one single thing on these lists, whether it's a physical tool left on the site or a digital signature missing from a PDF, you are not done. You do not get your final payment. And legally, you are still on the hook.
Wow. Okay, so our mission today is to decode this exit strategy for you. We're going to break down the two distinct phases this source document outlines. First, there's completion, which seems to be mostly about the physical stuff.
Right.
And then there's contract closeout, which looks like the administrative beast.
And we absolutely have to talk about the defects notification period at the end because that is the twist ending to this whole saga.
Yes, we will definitely get to that. Let's jump right in with phase one, though, completion. Now, to a layperson like me, or maybe to you listening, completion seems pretty obvious.
Sure.
If I hire a contractor to build a factory, completion means the factory is built. The lights turn on, the machines hum, done. But Section 2 of this document says it's a bit more nuanced than that.
It is. Section 2 defines completion as carrying out all closeout activities for the works. And you have to spot the capitalization there in the text.
Works with a capital W.
Exactly. Works with a capital W. In contract law, that is a defined term. It's not just the bricks and mortar. It's the entire scope of the obligation.
Okay, so what is the actual goal here? If it's not just building the thing, what is the contractor chasing?
The ultimate prize at the end of this phase is a document called the Taking Over Certificate.
Taking over, that sounds a little aggressive.
It actually is highly protective. You should think of it as a transfer of custody.
Yeah.
Because until you get that certificate, the building and really everything that happens to it is the contractor's problem.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if a storm blows out a window the night before the ribbon cutting ceremony, contractor pays for it. If a pipe bursts, contractor pays.
Wow.
The exact moment that certificate is signed by the engineer, the risk transfers to the employer. It is the formal, legal handover of possession.
So the contractor is desperate to get this piece of paper.
Oh, desperate. Every single day. It is another day of incredibly high financial risk. But to get it, they have to navigate the process requirements.
Right. I'm looking at the list here in the document. It starts with the obvious stuff. Final inspections. You have to do a joint site inspection to prove the building isn't falling down, but then it gets into handover documentation.
This is critical. You can't just toss the keys to the owner and drive off into the sunset.
All right.
You have to hand over the brain of the building. The document explicitly says this documentation must be submitted to and accepted by the engineer.
Accepted is a tricky word there, though, isn't it? It sort of implies the engineer can just say, I don't like the font you used, and reject the whole thing.
Well, in practice, it definitely can feel that subjective sometimes. But usually it's about completeness. We're talking about as-built drawings, warranty certificates, test results. If you built a complex cooling system, but you didn't provide the schematics for how to fix it, you haven't actually fulfilled the contract. You've delivered a very expensive machine without a user manual.
Makes sense. And there's a detail in Section 2.4 that I absolutely love because it feels so analog.
The binders.
Yes. We live in a world of cloud storage and EDMS systems, but this document insists on a contract completion dossier submitted in a hard copy binder.
Explicitly labeled, too.
Why? Why do we still need physical binders in 2026? Are these engineers just hoarding paper?
There are two very good reasons for it. One is long-term accessibility. Digital formats change constantly. Software licenses expire, servers crash, passwords get lost. But a physical binder on a shelf, you can pull that down and read it in 50 years without needing an IT guy.
That is true.
The second reason is legal weight. There's just something about a physical, wet ink signature in a bound volume that lawyers and auditors implicitly trust. It's the fail-safe of the project history.
It's the, in case of emergency, break glass binder.
Exactly. It proves that on this specific date, this specific person physically verified this fact. It's an audit trail you can hold in your hands.
Okay, so you've got your binders packed. Now let's look at the physical site itself. The document references Sample Form 4.1, which is the demobilization checklist.
Demobilization is a fascinating concept to me. Because when you start a job, mobilization, it's exciting. You're bringing in trailers, massive cranes, armies of workers. It feels like an invasion.
Yeah, lots of energy.
Right. But demobilization is making that entire army disappear without a trace. And honestly, it's often much harder than mobilizing.
The checklist is surprisingly strict here. It's not just pack your bags and leave. Item 1 says surplus materials removed from site. Now, if I'm the owner, wouldn't I want the extra bricks or pipes? I mean, free stuff, right?
You would think so, but usually no. Unless it's a specific agreed-upon spare part. It's just trash that the owner has to pay to dispose of later. Let's say a contractor overordered 500 feet of PVC pipe. That's their mistake and their property. The owner doesn't want their shiny new facility turning into a storage yard for the contractor's bad math.
That makes total sense. Basically, take your garbage with you. Then there's item 5. All utility hookup points removed from site. This felt very specific to me. Why highlight the hookups?
It's a detail that catches rookies off guard all the time. When you set up a construction site, you know those temporary trailers where the architects and foremen sit?
Yeah, the little portable offices.
Right. To run those, you have to tap into the local grid. You run temporary power lines, temporary water, maybe even a temporary sewage line.
Sure, you need lights and toilets for the crew.
But when you leave, you can't just unplug the extension cord and drive away. You have to physically remove the infrastructure and cap it off safely. If you leave a live electrical wire sticking out of the ground where your trailer used to be, that is a massive safety hazard. The checklist forces you to erase the evidence that you were ever plugged in.
Speaking of erasing evidence, let's talk about item 7. Equipment and tools exit inspection completed. Why does the employer care if the contractor takes their own drills and hammers home?
It's twofold. First, it's theft prevention. On a massive chaotic site, it's very easy for site tools, which might actually be owned by the employer, to magically end up in a contractor's truck.
Right.
But more importantly, it's about liability and safety. They don't want you leaving behind a broken ladder or a leaking diesel generator that creates an environmental hazard on their property. It's a clean break policy.
And finally, item 9, site reinstatement completed.
That is the leave it better than you found it clause. If you dug a huge trench for a temporary internet cable, you have to fill it in. If you parked a massive crane on the front lawn and killed all the grass, you resod it. The site has to look like a finished, pristine product, not a crime scene.
So that covers demobilization. You've cleaned up, you've packed your physical binders, but then we get to the famous punch list. Now, I have to admit, I always thought a punch list was just a running list of everything that is broken that needs fixing.
That is the most common misconception. You always hear people say, oh, we'll just throw it on the punch list and fix it later. But document E2.17 makes a very critical, highly technical distinction in section 4.3. This is the completion punch list. And the text is very bold about one specific thing. It is only to be used for, and I quote, minor outstanding works.
Minor's doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence.
It is the most important word in the entire section. The document actually warns you. It says other lists, specifically the mechanical completion punch list and the commissioning punch list, must be 100% finished before you even start this list.
Okay, help me understand the practical difference there. Give me an example of what goes where.
Sure. Let's say you built a house. If the central air conditioning doesn't turn on or the main toilet doesn't flush, that is not a minor outstanding work. That is a fundamental functional failure.
Right.
You are, strictly speaking, still in the commissioning phase. You cannot ask for a taking over certificate if the house isn't practically livable.
So you can't use the completion punch list to hide the fact that the AC is completely busted.
Absolutely not. The engineer should and will reject that immediately. The completion punch list is for cosmetic, minor stuff. There's a scratch on the paint in the hallway. This door handle is a little stiff. We're missing one plastic light bulb cover in the closet.
I see. It's the difference between the car doesn't start and the car has a smudge on the windshield.
Exactly. If you try to slip a non-starting car into the completion phase, you are violating the whole process. This rule protects the employer from taking over a broken building and paying for it.
And looking at the form itself for this punch list, it's rigorous. It has 3 columns. The item description, the contractor's plan, an actual date to fix it, and the engineer's verification signature. And notice this little note at the bottom. Contractor shall attach supporting documentary evidence.
Yes. This right here is the bane of every project manager's existence. You cannot just check the box in Excel and say, hey, I fixed the door handle.
You need actual proof.
You need rock-solid proof. You need a photo. You need a signed work order. You need a test report. If you have 500 items on your punch list, which, by the way, is very common on big commercial jobs.
500? Wow.
Easily. If you have 500 items, you need 500 before photos and 500 after photos.
That sounds like an absolute administrative nightmare.
It is agony. Pure administrative agony. But without it, the engineer has zero reason to believe you actually did the work. They are not going to walk a massive industrial site every single day to check if you tightened one screw. They want the evidence delivered directly to their desk.
So that covers phase 1, the physical side of things. The site is clean, the minor defects are logged and photographed, the binder is literally sitting on the shelf. The engineer finally gives you the taking over certificate. We are done, right? Time for a beer.
Not even close. Put the beer down. Now we enter phase 3, contract closeout.
Wait, why is it phase 3? Did we just skip phase 2?
In the internal logic of this document, phase 2 is that whole punch list processing ordeal we just discussed. So phase 3 is where the lawyers and the accountants step into the room.
Ah, the suits have arrived. So how is closeout fundamentally different from completion?
Think of completion as the technical exit. The physical building is standing there and it works. Closeout is the commercial exit. Section 3.1 defines it as fulfilling all obligations, commercial, technical, administrative, and all of this has to happen before the start of the defects notification period.
And naturally, it requires its very own binder.
The contract closeout dossier. Because as we established, one binder is never enough.
I do love that they separate them, though. It really draws a line between the physical work and the business side of the project. And when I look at the contract closeout checklist in section 4.2, wow, this list covers absolutely everything under the sun.
It is the checklist of everything. It's perfectly designed to ensure that when the contractor finally walks away, there are no loose ends that could snap back and haunt the employer later.
Let's look at some of these specific items. Item 5 says spares parts delivered, preserved, and stored. Why is this a closeout item and not a physical completion item?
This is a vital commercial point. The contractor bought the machines, so they know exactly what parts break first. They are usually contractually obligated to provide startup spare parts. But here's the thing. In engineering, failures often happen right at the very beginning of a machine's life or way at the very end. It's a concept called the bathtub curve.
Okay, the bathtub curve.
Yeah. So if a primary conveyor belt snaps just 3 weeks after the contractor leaves, and the employer runs down to the storeroom to fix it and finds the room empty because the contractor forgot to deliver the spare belt,
The whole plant shuts down.
the whole plant shuts down, costing millions. So the contractor has to prove those parts are physically in the building and preserved, meaning they aren't just rusting in a damp cardboard box in the basement, they're commercially ready to be used.
Got it. Then I see item 12, all NCRs resolved. I see this acronym a lot in the source. What exactly is an NCR?
It stands for non-conformance report. That's what gets filed when something wasn't built exactly according to the approved drawing. Maybe a concrete wall is 2 inches too far to the left. Maybe you used a slightly different grade of steel than specified. An NCR documents that specific deviation.
And resolved just means you went back and fixed it.
Not always. And that's where the commercial nuance comes in. Resolve simply means the engineer has accepted the final outcome. Sometimes, yes, that means you literally tear down the wall and rebuild it. But sometimes, If the error is minor and doesn't affect structural integrity, you negotiate.
Negotiate how?
The contractor might say, look, the wall is structurally fine, it's just 2 inches off. I'll give you a $5,000 credit on the final bill if we just leave it as is. If the engineer and the employer agree to that, the NCR is marked resolved with a credit.
So resolved basically just means we have formally stopped arguing about this.
Exactly. There are no open questions left to answer.
Which brings us perfectly to the money. Item 14 says no outstanding claims, and item 15 is back charges satisfied.
This is where the meetings get very contentious. No outstanding claims means you are done fighting over scope. You aren't arguing that you deserve an extra $100,000 for that unexpected rain delay 3 months ago. You are agreeing on the final absolute number.
And item 17, all safety incidents resolved.
That's a massive one. If a worker got hurt during the project, there's paperwork, insurance claims, maybe even government investigations from safety boards. You absolutely cannot close a commercial contract if there's still an open pending investigation regarding a safety incident. The financial liability is just too undefined. The employer needs legal certainty that the chapter is closed.
And of course, down here at item 4, operating and maintenance manuals submitted.
The construction manual. You wouldn't buy a $30 toaster without the manual. You definitely cannot buy a $30 million chemical plant without one.
Okay, so we've done the physical cleanup, we've done the administrative cleanup, the safety checks, the manuals. Now we have to talk about the final act, the actual money.
Yes. Section 3.1 specifically mentions the processing of the contractor's final invoice. This is the big paycheck everyone has been sweating and waiting for. It's where the actual profit is usually sitting.
But there is a massive catch. A huge legal hurdle you have to jump over to get that final check. It's down in section 4.4, the release and certificate of final payment.
This is a mandatory letter. And if you read the text of this letter carefully, it is essentially a legal shield that the employer is forcing you to carry for them.
It starts with a chain of payment certification. The text says the contractor has to certify that they have paid all their subcontractors and suppliers.
This is designed to prevent a lien, which is a huge, terrifying risk in commercial construction. Imagine you, as the employer, pay the main contractor in full, but the contractor takes that money and, I don't know, goes on vacation to the Bahamas instead of paying the guy who supplied all the cement for the foundation.
Okay, that sounds bad for the cement guy.
It's bad for you, because that cement supplier can legally come after you, the employer, for the missing money. They could put a lien on your brand new building, essentially holding the physical property hostage legally until they get paid, even though you already gave the money to the contractor.
That seems incredibly unfair to the employer.
It feels unfair, but the law is designed to protect the lower-level suppliers from getting stiffed. So this specific clause is the employer putting their foot down and saying, I am not giving you your final profit check until you swear on a stack of Bibles that you have paid every single person below you. If a Laren shows up tomorrow, it is legally your problem, not mine.
And then comes the indemnity section. The text actually says the contractor agrees to indemnify and hold harmless the employer.
Right. That means if anyone sues the employer a year from now because of something the contractor did or failed to do, the contractor has to step back in, hire the lawyers, and pay the damages. It shifts the legal risk entirely back to the contractor.
But here is the part of the document that honestly gave me chills reading it. It's the none clause.
Ah, yes, the absolute point of no return.
The drafted letter literally says, the undersigned hereby unconditionally releases and forever discharges the employer from all claims except as set forth below. And then there's just a blank space. And the note right under it says, if none, write none in space above.
I always tell people this is the most dangerous blank space in the entire construction industry.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? It's just a single word.
Because if you physically write the word none in that blank space and you sign the paper, that's it. It's over. The game is permanently finished. Let's say 2 weeks later, your accounting department calls and says, oh no, we totally forgot to bill the employer for that extra structural steel work we did back in November. It cost us $50,000 out of pocket.
Right.
If you wrote none on this final release form, you cannot ask for that $50,000. Ever.
You can't go back and just say it was an accounting error.
No, absolutely not. You have legally, unconditionally released the employer from that obligation. You wipe the slate completely clean. The court will look at your signature and say, you said there were no more claims.
Wow. It really is a speak now or forever hold your peace kind of moment.
Completely. It is an unconditional legal release. And employers demand this because they desperately need financial certainty. They need to close their annual books. They cannot have a contractor coming back year after year saying, oh, hey, I found another receipt in my truck. Pay me. Writing none is putting the final lock on the door.
So if you have a lingering disagreement over money, you absolutely must list it right there in that space.
Without fail. If you think you are owed money, you write it in that exact space. You write, except for claim number 42 regarding the rain delay, that keeps that one specific claim legally alive to be fought over later. But everything else, gone forever.
It's high-stakes poker right at the very end of a multi-year project.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why this closeout phase usually involves the expensive lawyers and the commercial directors, not just the guys walking around with the hard hats. A site foreman should never, ever be the one signing this document.
It is genuinely amazing when you step back and look at the whole picture. We started this deep dive just thinking about a finished, shiny building. But what this document really describes is a complex transformation of responsibility.
That is a brilliant way to put it. Transformation of responsibility.
Right, because we have completion, which is all about the physical site. Cleaning up the trash, removing the temporary electrical hookups, fixing the minor paint scratches on the punch list. That's the contractor saying, I'm done building.
Exactly. And then you transition to closeout, which is the paperwork, submitting the O&M manuals, proving the spare parts are stored, signing the financial releases. That's the contractor saying, I'm done managing.
And document E2.17 proves that in professional project management, done isn't a feeling. It isn't a vibe. It's not looking at a beautiful sunset over a new bridge you just built.
No, absolutely not. Done is a very specific signature on a highly specific form, physically verified by an engineer, with a corresponding labeled binder sitting on a shelf. If you do not have the binder, you aren't done.
Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today. But before we wrap up, I have to ask you about something. We kept mentioning the defects notification period. This document says all of this intense work, the checklists, the physical binders, the exit inspections, it is all just to start that period.
Yeah, that is the provocative thought I want to leave you with today.
Yeah.
We spent this entire time talking about how incredibly hard it is to exit a project. But technically, legally, once you hand over these binders and you sign these terrifying releases, you merely enter the defects notification period. You're actually still on the hook.
So you leave the site, but you don't really leave the project.
Exactly. You've demobilized your army, you've secured your final paycheck, you've signed the unconditional release. But for the next year, or sometimes 2 years, depending on the specific contract, if something breaks, it's still your problem.
So if a pipe bursts 6 months after the ribbon cutting?
It's your pipe. You have to send a crew back and fix it on your dime. The taking over certificate transfers the custody of the building, but it does not absolve you of the fundamental quality of your work.
So all of this rigmarole, the strict checklists, the none clause, the site cleanup, it's all just the entrance fee to the next phase of liability.
Precisely. We build things to last, which means the responsibility has to last too. The physical project ends, but the legal liability survives. I always call it a zombie project. It's technically dead, but it can still reach out and grab you when you least expect it.
A very sobering thought for anyone planning their next big renovation. Done is a very, very relative term.
Indeed it is.
Well, I will certainly never look at a grand opening ribbon cutting the same way again. I'll just be wondering where the binders are.
Check the shelf in the back office. They better be there.
Thank you for helping us unpack this absolutely fascinating document. And to you listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the art of the exit. We'll catch you next time.
If you're interested in the templates, please visit our shop. The link is in the description.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see next time.